All right, as always, thanks for joining. Well, today we're going to be talking a little bit about European mounts, specifically lower jawbone on a European mount. It's not something you see too often. This is my first buck that I ever shot in 2018, and when I initially did the European mount, I put the lower jawbone on. And after that, it fell off. And so I looked up a couple of videos, and I really couldn't find anything on how people were hanging the lower jawbone. So I thought today we'd go over how I fixed this and got it on there. So stick around. Let's get to it. Here's what I ended up doing. Is I ended up going and getting up at the hardware store some JB weld. This is actually marine weld, but the reason I got this is it dries white. And when I redid this jawbone, I used some epoxy and it dries as a gray, and I'm not all that happy with the results of that. I don't know what the heck happened with it. There was like this kind of yellowy stuff, so I'm going to kind of clean that all up as best I can before I put back on. We did lose one tooth from it, and then what we're going to do is we're going to use a little bit of white and a little off-white paint, mix those to get a kind of a color match, and then we're going to touch up that area just to kind of hide it as best we can. And we'll be doing the same with this deer skull. Now, I guess first thing first is at least I have the bottom jaw already glued back together. And a lot of times when you're doing these two jaws and come undone, so throw a bit of epoxy and then wrap some rubber bands around here and then glue that back together. That's kind of the first step. So what we're going to do is we're going to be making sure that these pieces right here are going to be going through here. I'm just going to bend those in just a little bit. And then you're going to see that these are going to rest right back into here. And this is the area we're going to fill with epoxy and to lock this whole thing in. Alright, so what's nice about this epoxy is basically you're just going to push this stuff out. And then once you're done, just back it up just a little. Squeeze that off. Put your cap back on. And you can keep that for later. And then we're just going to use a plastic knife here and we're going to mix these two thoroughly. So we've got the epoxy resin and the activator, equal amounts of that, and thoroughly mix that all up. We've got a generous amount of that on there. And then we're just going to slide these guys on in there. All those to make contact. And then we're going to kind of wrap a little bit of this epoxy around it, just to really set that in and smooth it out too. So that way when it dries, it just has a really nice clean look. Alright, so we're completely dried and this thing's ready to go really if we wanted to mount it, but we're going to touch up our white epoxy, so we're going to basically mix a tan and a white paint to match the color of the bone, and we're going to touch that all up and then we'll get it hanging. Oh, that's way too much.
Yes.
32.
23.
And this process works whether you're dealing with a white-tailed buck or other animals, such as this is a porcupine I shot during opening day of rifle season here in Michigan. Same sort of thing though, right at this joint here, filled it with some epoxy, let that set up overnight, threw some color match paint on it, and really hides pretty well. You really don't know it's there unless you're looking for it. So, alright, well this thing turned out really awesome. It is definitely one of my favorite deer because it's my first buck ever. But I really love the look of the jawbone on there. I wish I had saved more of the lower jawbones from my other deer that I've shot. But this will always be hanging up with the lower jawbone on it now because it is epoxied in place. So, alright, well as always, thanks for sticking around and we'll see you next time. Well, that's at the end. Don't get ahead of it. Don't get too far ahead.
I gotta think of it.
Ahead.
Oh my gosh, wow.